Hi, everybody. My name is K. Patrick Glover. We're here on Potluck today. We're going to be talking about what it's like to start a career in the arts and how difficult and how much dedication it takes. My two guests today both have over 20 years of experience. They are singers, they are songwriters, they are actors, and they are writers. Mr. Seth Adam Kallick, Mr. Jacob Doux. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Guys.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, pleasure.
So let's start with the beginning. How did you first, Seth? How did you first decide to get involved in the arts?
I think ever since I got my parents' attention, hey, look at me. We kind of started from a really early age, and then it just cultivated in high school with plays, musicals, choirs. It was the one place where geeks are cool now. I think we paved the way for it. But back then, I really didn't feel safe. We moved around a lot. So the theater was a place where I could find solace. Or the first time that I ever made anybody laugh by doing something so silly, I knew that I was locked. So it was from an early age that I just started getting into writing and singing and acting and just trying to do all of those things at a very, very young age without any real.
The music was first for you?
Singing was first, I think from about 4, 5, 6, and then the 4 kids in school that can sing. They put those kids out front all the time. So it became singing, and then about 18, I started playing guitar, and then it just kind of moved on from there.
Jacob, what about you? How did you get started?
Well, for me, I was always unable to control myself, like in any aspect you can think of as a rambunctious child, but music seemed to center me. I'm sure it had a lot to do with the fact that my father played guitar and he sang and he wrote his own songs, and I have no doubt that inspired me. But even before I was in kindergarten, I was running around, trying to wiggle my butt like Elvis and doing the slides like Jackson and just doing anything I can. And my first talent show, although it was a lip sync, was in kindergarten. I did terrible. I did not even get to perform. But from that moment forward, I knew I had to perform. I have a big family, always with my brothers and sisters. I was the class clown or just the, trouble child, however you want to look at it. Always seemed to grab attention, kind of like you said. And once you have that feeling of others are looking at you for reasons that you have chosen rather than reasons they have chosen, I think it gives you more power. So I wasn't just being bad. They were going, oh, wow, that's a really neat story. Or I can captivate you as I sing this song. So it just continued from there.
That was a way better answer than mine.
We'll jump a little bit more into the history in a minute, but let me ask you this first. Since you've both been doing this for over 20 years, that means you're rich and famous now, right?
There's water in this cup, so yes. I think Jacob will agree because we know each other to some degree, that you don't do this because it's money.
No.
We got into it and we knew it was like back when starving artists, I guess, were cool, where it was just like you're always working on the art. Whatever little menial day job you had was just so that you could go out and hustle and do your arts. But no, I am not rich and famous. People know me. I'm more known now than I was before. I have been able to use my art to trade for food and services. So in a way, I am richer now than I was before. But as far as mansions and cars and things, no, not at all.
Does your work pay the bills?
No, and it's never come close. I mean, I'm sure there are some that can, and there's many different avenues. That's one of the things that I think I continue to learn, is that the farther you go, like when we first start, you think starving artist, rich and famous. But there's about 7,000 levels in between it, and half of them can support you in one way or another. Mm-hmm. But you have to find that outlet. And like he said, and I absolutely agree, I don't think most people who do this for a very long time, unless you get lucky and find success quick, do it for money. They do it because they have to. I do it because I can't even imagine being alive and breathing without creation, without getting these thoughts, emotions, and pains and happinesses and everything out of me, and because they overwhelm us. So I don't think it'd be great. I would love to make money. And like you said also, I'm much closer than I used to be. I get more money for certain gigs. I have more things that pay better. Like you said, we act. Like I'm sure both of us did a number of things before we got a gig that got us on Amazon, or a gig that actually gave you some money.
Yeah, it's the theater. It's called the theater.
Both of these gentlemen have starring roles in films that are available on Amazon right now. Seth is the star of Butterfly Kisses, directed by former host Eric Christopher Myers, who's been here several times. And Jacob is the star of a horror film called 8-Ball Clown, with a sequel coming. You've both. How did you go from music to acting, Seth?
Musical theater was really the avenue. It was acting and music at the same time. Music, for me, was the first thing that I ever realized, something that had power, immense power, singing in the car with my family. We call it harmonies. Where you're singing in the car and everybody's doing a different harmony, okay? So we were always doing that. So the music and the theater to me were synonymous, doing a song, doing a thing, doing this. But I realized that, in order to be a songwriter, you have to read a lot. And if you read a lot, you learn a lot about acting, and you learn about practical applications to do it. So the acting and the singing all really just kind of happened at the same time. I could go and play music out for money, like you said, and try to make $250 and like get free sandwich and get beer. And like I was like, I'm rich right now. They didn't even have to throw the $250 in. We would just play. Sometimes somebody would be like, you get 2 beers and that's it, and like I'd play for 4 hours and that was the gig. But acting was just a natural. It's a lot harder, I think, to get substantial acting jobs that pay if you don't want to move somewhere and grind.
I think that's almost an understood standard. Because once you start looking into it, even if you're Joe Schmo that hops on the internet and you're like, how can I get started? They're going to say, find an agent, move to that area you want to do well in. So New York, California, major cities. Like there's things happening in every city. Baltimore, as we know, because we're a part of it, every day people are creating, drawing, painting, making TV shows, podcasts, etc. But the big draw and social draw comes from those larger areas and cities.
Yeah.
And also you're destitute if you move to New York. You are going to have a job like we have jobs, except you can be poor in Baltimore and be successful more so than you can move to New York and be poor and successful.
Yeah, you're not paying.
Do you know what I mean?
For a
so if I have to have a job to support my art, I'd rather be somewhere where I can control my own circumstances. And now I get paid for my art more than I got paid ever before in my job. So it doesn't happen all the time. You know how it is. It's a hustle for every job. I say that word a lot, and I mean it. It's being an artist is hustling, is convincing somebody that what you've created is enough to emote something, and you're going to transfer that in a monetary value, so that I can go and eat dinner or whatever.
You both front currently active bands. Yeah. Your band is
Crimson Orchid.
How frequently do you play?
Well, sadly, the older we get, we started in 2003, and I've had bands for many years before that. But while we've done many, many things, traveled the coast, been in magazines and all different kinds of things, it got slower as the years went on because, coincidentally, I don't have children, and neither does my bassist, but the other two do. And we are all adults trying to pay rent and take care of kids or we all have wives, we all have family, we all have needs, just like anyone else. But it becomes harder and harder when you're struggling and you know you're not getting that money, because before, like when we first started playing in New York 10 years ago, we'd get gigs on Thursday night, Sunday night. So you'd finish work, shoot to New York, play at 12, 1, 2 in the morning, shoot back, and whoever works last drops everybody else off and returns the van. Like, you just keep on struggling. You gotta hustle. It's a hustle not just to make the money, but also to convince others that what you're doing is worth their time if you can't do it in the moment.
Especially when they have families, and especially when you're in a band. I find bands are a lot harder to keep together, which is why my band, Questionable Pancakes, assuming that was the next question.
That was
for
the next
me,
question, yes.
Not to jump on it, is I don't tour with the band. I write the lyrics and I come up with an idea of what I want, and like I was telling Jacob, is I'll just now grab musicians that I want to play with and be like, do you want to jam? And we'll write a song. And then we'll go record that song because I can do that easier. I have some very good friends that I've known ever since high school that have been playing music with me their whole life, and they record. So I'm blessed to be able to not have to pay to record. But as far as having a band together, to put a band together.
So you don't do live gigs much anymore?
I do live gigs when people that I've played with ask me to come and do a gig. Hey, you want to come out and sing a thing? But we played, I think, last year at the 8x10 in Baltimore, and did about 6 weeks to put it together. But I can't find people who. It helps if you have a practice space, and it helps if you got to practice like 3 days a week. You have to practice. It's all about practice. And I refuse to go out and do a show that I've not rehearsed for, and not that everybody needs to rehearse, but like, to me, it's harder to put a show together, and then what's the output of that? Is 6 weeks worth of my time really going to net? How much money am I going to net for it? Not that I'm doing it for money, but to play a gig live would have to be for some type of like either a benefit or something. Like, I just put a group together and say 6 weeks we'll do this thing, because that's easier than like, can I see you 3 times a week to try to rehearse? So,
okay, Jacob, how did you go from fronting a band to starring in a feature film? How did the acting process
coincidence start? And my mama. I've been doing music forever. Like I said, I first started getting on stages in kindergarten.
Okay.
And I started getting on major stages in Baltimore, etc., by the time I was 16. And it wasn't until, I think, 2005. Like, it's funny because people in my life have always told me, like, oh, I could see you doing acting and stuff, but it was never really an interest of mine. I know I can play roles because you have to work people when you're an artist, but it was never something I had pursued. And my mom called me one day and said she read an article that they were looking for extras for Gary U. Garrick was doing a film, Deadlands: The Rising, and they needed zombies. And she was like, that sounds like something you'd like. And I was like, heck yeah, it is. So I went down there, I tried out, I became a zombie. And then after that, just like with a lot of things, you start getting into something and you go, hadn't thought about this. So I start looking into other things, and I read an article about, it was John Waters, Jimmy Traynor, and a couple other people that were all Baltimore area people. Of course, we know who John Waters is, but I'm like, Jimmy Traynor, and no offense, I love the man, but I'm like, this guy's from Dundalk, and I don't know who he is, so I'm just gonna hit him up. So I did, and I started handing out music to him and other directors he knew, like, use my stuff, whatever you want, put it in your movies. And then eventually I was like, you ever need a chubby bearded guy? I'll try out for one of your movies. And eventually they needed a chubby bearded guy. And it just, one thing led to another, because for me, I got a lot of problems, and I have trouble breaking out of my social constructs to build those bridges sometimes, but I always handle everything I do with utmost care and respect. So that, like how I met Seth and how I met you, was from that same formula. I did a project, I brought my best, I was respectful and tried to give everyone what they wanted of me, and someone offered me something else. With music, I have to keep going out there and pushing, and with acting, I've kind of gotten lucky, I guess, realistically. Okay. I mean, it's still, I guess, based on what I've done, but
there's a lot of, anybody will tell you, there's a lot of luck. There's a certain amount of luck that happens with it, and so I agree with what you said. How
did you go from high school theater to headlining a feature film?
When I dropped out of acting school in college, I got a job waiting tables, which is what you do if you're going to be a good actor. You go wait tables. Not only does it help you deal with people, it's quick. You know how to like. And over the years, I didn't really do. I got away from acting. I was playing out at like live down in Baltimore City for like 10 years. Playing 4 hours on a Sunday for money and getting, you're drinking a lot, way too much. But you do that when you didn't have anything else to do. It was fun. We were living the life. It was so much fun. And then I had a friend, Eric Christopher Myers, who was actually the first person I waited on when I waited tables when I was 18 years old. So that's. We've known each other a long time. He called me and he said, hey, do you want to help me like cast this movie? I'm looking to make this second movie. And he had done a movie before, and I had published my book, so we had been following up on each other, because when you know somebody for a while and you follow their dreams and your dreams, and it's kind of neat too.
So your first novel was actually before?
The first novel, yeah, American Nightmare, was before we did Butterfly Kisses. Okay. And then I had been doing musical theater and stage plays and writing sketch comedy in the interim before that, and then basically, unbeknownst to me, really training, using my skills and everything I ever learned to play a character who in the film is a real character and not, there's a camera in front of him, so it's like mockumentary. But it really wasn't, it seems to me, if I follow my life, it was an organic way to do it. And Eric trusted in me. He goes, I wrote this for you. If you're the only person I know who can pull it off. And I thought, what a tremendous thing to say to somebody before we even really done anything like, not of legitimacy, but like nothing that anybody would have seen. And I'm so involved and I love movies so much that I got to be a part of this process from the very beginning, and I bought into something that was going to be extremely difficult to do. And because we knew each other, we worked really hard at it, and it just became, I kind of used everything I ever learned up till that point. I would not have been able to make the movie, I think, 5 years ago.
Well, I think that's something you could tell me that I found myself have come back to several times, where we are constantly struggling, constantly trying to reach these new tiers, these new goals. And there's so many times where you have to, all of a sudden you get a moment of quiet and you go, crap, I did. I just was working so hard I didn't realize I made it to the next tier. Because definitely what I have done with my life today, 20 years ago, I would have thought I was rich and famous. It doesn't really, for me, it's not about the money. It was about the affecting change emotionally and spiritually and with other people to try and, that for me, especially with music, because my obsession stemmed from the fact that it made me feel like a human. I grew up with a lot of anger and different things, but music could calm that. And trying to give that back to other people drove me. Just saying. Sometimes we are closer than we realized. It's just we've already passed where we thought we couldn't get.
All right, so you're both writers. You've had a novel before I even met you. You just started writing recently. My company, Roxton Press, put out a book based on Eric Christopher Meyer's film Butterfly Kisses that features short stories expanding upon that universe. Both of you wrote stories for that book.
We did.
Since then, now you've started working on a children's book.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us how that happened.
Actually, it kind of goes back to a little bit of a game of chance and luck, and goes back to the fact that I said I have problems. While we were filming 8 Ball 2, a day came, I'll try and make this short, a day came that we had a 15-page script. It was supposed to be, it was the party we talked about earlier you didn't make it to. It was a children's party scene, blah, blah, blah. We come to that moment, all kinds of actors in the scene, everyone's talking about things I don't know what they're talking about. And I realized, because there's 2 directors, one gave me this script, one did not give me what he gave everybody else. So I was all in my head feeling anxious and crazy all day. Eric, again, we get to invoke Eric Christopher Myers. He was the second director working on 8 Ball 2, and he brought his son along with him a couple times. I get along great with kids, thank the Lord, because I love children. I got 14 nieces and nephews. And since I was in my head, I kept staying outside and no, I'm going to smoke. And I would just chain smoke and try not to look like I was freaking out. And he just kept being like, tell me a story, tell me a story. So I'm a storyteller. I've been writing songs and poems forever, so I just started making stuff up. And by the end of it, I didn't finish the story, but he seemed to really like it. And Eric told me how much he enjoyed it. And I said, I'll sit down and write it one day. So again, to squish the story, Eric invites me to his son's 7th birthday party. Mm-hmm. And I turn to my wife and I go, shoot, I should have sat down and wrote that. It won't take long. 3 days later, I have a 21,000-word novella. And when I gave it to Eric, he apparently it greatly affected Gareth. And Eric really liked it. So he said, you got to show Roxton. And before I had even seen the comment, he said, all he's got to do is email me. So I emailed it to you. But here I'm thinking, you guys were just taking a trip to Europe. So I'm like, they're not going to look at this. They'll get to it later. The day they come back, they're like, yeah, let's get together. And there we are. I had the offer. And it's fantastic because, like I said, I've always loved children. I've been writing forever, but music has been my goal. And metal is my thing, which creates a niche right off the bat. Metal is everywhere in the world, but it is never, and probably never will, come close to the popularity of country, pop, rap, and all of those things. So I keep myself down just by doing that. But with this, it's 100% pure. It's a message that doesn't need major thought. It's a positive thing that's going out to children with no false pretenses. It just is. And I was super excited about it this year.
Were you wearing the full 8-ball clown?
While we were telling the story?
While he was telling you the story?
Yes, because there is a picture.
Nice.
There's a picture on Facebook because I had used the name Daggerath, which is actually a battle from, isn't it Tolkien? Isn't that from one of those stories? I just think you know more than I. Anyway.
I do, but if it is and I don't know it right now, somebody's going to call me on it.
It got stuck in my head because of a metal band that has it within the name, and I used that as the name of one of the kids, but they put a video up because they're like, what are we talking about? Are you talking to Gareth about Lord of the Rings? What's going on? And I was like, no, I was just telling him a story, but you just see me in my clown outfit telling him this little story about the birds and stuff. It was hilarious. He's a really great kid.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of people now, particularly young, who think that the path of fame is through the internet and through YouTube, and that it's going to be an easy process. That it's going to be, I'm just going to, throw some videos up on YouTube, and I'm going to get some following, and they're going to start paying me lots of money, and I'm going to be, rich and famous like Justin Bieber or the other internet sensations. If a young person came to you and asked you for advice, and what path would you recommend, or would you even consider yourself appropriate to be asking that question or recommending something? What would you say to somebody who says, I want to be a YouTube star?
I'd say go for it, but you have to find, because the real tragedy of what you're asking is that it is possible. The reason children today think it's possible is because they see it is. It might be 1 in a million, but there is that young boy who he opens new toys. That kid makes like $8 million a year. And there are those lucky circumstances, but there are lucky circumstances like that in everything. With my nieces and nephews that enjoy acting or singing or whatever, I just tell them to stay true to themselves and do the best they can. To just keep pushing forward and trying to stay true to themselves, but you got to be original. That's one of the hardest parts. To set yourself apart in a venue like YouTube or even Instagram or TikTok or Likey or any of the things they're using now. You have to find that special flair.
Do you think the prevalence of something like YouTube is giving people a false impression of how easy it is, how much work is actually involved versus how much work they think is involved?
I don't think that YouTube has anything to do with that. I think that people naturally think that it's easy. Anytime I tell everybody I act, put me in your thing, I'm like, I don't even entertain that. But talking about YouTube, my advice is, listen, I wish I had YouTube back in the day. We would have made movies all day long.
Amen.
I would have been putting content out like nobody's in business. I am a chatty guy in person. It's hard to market it. It's hard to market yourself a lot because you don't want to brag about yourself. So I don't put videos of me up doing a lot of things. My advice is, if you're a writer, get a notebook. Don't ever be away from it. Write every day. Try to write every day. You have to work on it every day. You also have to live, and you have to experience life and take some risks. Because really good art, unfortunately, comes from loss. And once you actually see your mind make a flip, like, you know what I mean, and you kind of have that, we don't have children, so I don't have that kind of life-changing flip where it's all about that. But get a notebook. If the art is good, if what you create is great, surround yourself with people who encourage you and try to get it out there. Because nobody will ever take away something that's an awesome product. And if you could show it to people, cool. Don't think you're going to get rich in 2 seconds, though.
No, I just want to double agree to that, because that's something even now as an adult I'm still learning, is surrounding yourself with people who encourage you and who believe in you is key to survival. Because it's very hard to survive when you're just an island floating off alone.
Oh, that was poetry.
Oh,
That's beautiful. Both of your work is available readily on the internet?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Your name?
Jacob Doux.
Seth, Adam Kallick.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming out today.
Thanks for having us.
I think the big takeaway that we get here is that art requires dedication, that there's something that you're really going to need to put in from your life. I think anybody can become a star, but it's not going to be something you do in 5 minutes. It's something that you're going to need to dedicate a large part of your life to.
Evolve.
Thank you for coming out today, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys. It was a good chat.
It was a good chat. And thank you for watching. Previous episodes of Potluck are available online at potluck-online.org. And this episode will be available there soon. These gentlemen's work is both available online. My company, Roxton Press, can be found online. The book that we discussed, In the Blink of an Eye, based on Eric Christopher Meyer's Butterfly Kisses, is available right now, with future books coming soon, including a new novel from Seth Kallick and the first of a series of children's books from Jacob Ledoux. I have been K. Patrick Glover, and this is Potluck. Thank you.